Bevels can make or break your model, and they are essential for defining the design language. In this video, I'll show you how to use bevels effectively in Blender and instantly improve your hard surface modeling skills. Let's go. So before we get deeper into the subject of bevels, we need to answer a question: why the hell do we actually need bevels in the first place? And that's a very basic question. Now, talking about basics, if you're new to Blender and you don't know what the hell is going on, I highly recommend you grab our free course, which is called Hard Surface Jumpstart in Blender, and you can get it, like I said, for free on our website, and the link is in the video description, so go ahead and grab it. Now, this course will teach you all the foundations, all the basics of Blender UI, hard surface modeling, basics of rendering, texturing, etc. in just a few hours. So it's possibly the best and fastest way to learn and sort of understand how Blender works in just a day or two. So if you want to really progress quickly without any frustration and learn the basics as fast as possible, go ahead and grab it. Like I said, the link is in the video description and the course is free. So going back to bevels. Now, why the hell do we need bevels? Bevels are really important because they will help you to define the design language of your model. Okay, so let me just grab a cube here, regular cube, and you can see that I do have a highlight on that cube, but this is not a bevel. This is actually something that's called cavity, and I'm using cavity when I'm modeling because it helps me to define the model outlines, and it kind of fakes like a tiny bevel on your model. So you can turn it on and off here by toggling on and off this option, or if you're using hard ups and box cutter, you can go to Alt V menu and toggle it off in here. And I can see that from this angle I cannot tell where this face on the top ends and where this face on the left begins. It's just melding together. So the design language here when I'm modeling is just vague and not very precise. So it's very difficult to understand how your model actually looks in 3D space. And that's where the bevels come in, okay? So when I'm gonna add a bevel, you can boom, clearly see there's a highlight here and it separates these two faces. So bevels, in short, they're gonna create highlights and planar shifts, so changes of angles between planes on your model, and this will basically catch light and the light will reflect and leave like a highlight, and it will help you to read the design language a bit better, and also helps the viewer, so whoever is looking at your model on your portfolio or wherever, to understand the shape of the model a bit better. Okay, every single thing in life has a bevel. Even the sharp edge of the knife has a bevel. It's tiny, but there is, there's a bevel. So there is no such a thing as no beveled item in real life, okay? Everything has a bevel. So to imitate this, we need to add bevel artificially to our models, because without bevels, the corners of a cube or any object in Blender I'm gonna be infinitely sharp. So it doesn't matter how closely, if I'm gonna remove this bevel, right? Doesn't matter how closely I'm gonna zoom in, you just can't see the difference, okay, because it's infinitely sharp. So you need the bevel to fix that problem. So that's number one. Now we have bevels and we have chamfers, okay? So bevels are round, yeah, like this, and chamfers are actually slanted. They can be at different angles, but this is basically a surface between two edges. So if I'm gonna go to a bevel here, and I'm gonna scroll it down to, I'm using hard ups by the way, but I'm gonna show you how to do this with Vanilla Blender in a minute. I'm gonna scroll down to have only two edges, and I'm gonna fix the Autosmooth, and boom, there you go. You have a chamfer, right, running in here. But then of course on top of this we need bevel on all these edges, so I'm gonna add another bevel here with control, and now we have a chamfer and a bevel running on this cube. So you can see that there's a planar shift here very clearly at 45 degrees, splitting these two faces, and then we have bevel on top of that. So like I said, you can have chamfers and bevels, and the chamfers can be small as well. So we could just make this chamfer smaller as well, and the bevel as well. So you can change the sizes of these, and depending on what size you're using, you will change the design language of the model, okay? Now, a very important thing to understand when you're working in Blender is to avoid sharp edges whenever you're running a bevel. So let me show you. If I go to edit mode, by the way, I'm using machine tools to do that, and I'm gonna go to edge mode and right click and add sharp to all these edges above 30 degrees angle. Now if I'm gonna run bevel, you can see that I'm gonna have this kind of a nasty highlight here around this edge. And the reason for that is because simply if I apply this bevel here, you will see that my sharp edge was split into two by the bevel. So now it basically sort of surrounds the bevel from each side, and there's a sharp edge running in here. Now what it will do, it will create this kind of a nasty highlight, okay? So you want to avoid that, and whenever you're running a bevel, you want to remove the sharp edge if you don't need it. So watch how this will change when I'm going to remove this sharp edge, okay? So I'm going to go here and clear sharp, and boom, we are back to a really soft transition here, okay? So be careful when you're running bevels. You don't want sharp edges around them. Now let's talk about optimal bevel size for your models, okay? Now this is really down to your artistic choice, or maybe even a model you're creating. So for example, if I'm creating something that's sci-fi and it's, you know, very mechanical, I'm not gonna be creating very large bevels because it's just gonna make things look very soft. So if I'm gonna remove this cube for a second, let's say we have a cylinder here and I wanna make it look mechanical. So I'm gonna run a bevel, which is gonna be tiny here, okay? Let me just increase the number of verts here to 100. And by the way, if you're wondering how I do that, it's an add-on that allows you to add more verts after resizing, scaling, or moving the cylinder, and it's called reprimitive, okay? Because Blender Vanilla can't do that for some reason. It's more important for the developers to play with Autosmooth and fuck it up completely in Blender 4.1 rather than fix important things like, you know, this one. But anyway, reasons, right? So you have, well, let's just shade it smooth. There you go. So now you can clearly see that we have this tiny bevel here. And, you know, if I'm gonna, for example, add a chamfer here manually by, you know, using Control B shortcut, you see that it looks a bit more mechanical than, for example, this, right? You know, this doesn't look very mechanical, looks a bit more plasticish, right? So if you wanna have something, you know, made of metal, and you want to sort of emulate that, you want to use bevels that correspond with similar objects in real life, right? So if this is, for example, some kind of like a, you know, bearing or whatnot, right? It would have a far more mechanical feel than, you know, a very soft bevel, okay, like this, right? I'm not saying that this couldn't be made of metal, but, you know, when you see something like this, and let's say add some mud to it, I'm gonna be using Material Works add-on. That's our in-house add-on. You can get it on our website. So let's say I'm gonna add some graphite steel or whatever. You can see that, you know, it looks like it is actually metallic rather than, you know, something like this, which looks a bit more plasticish, right? Because we used to, you know, objects made of plastic have softer bevels, right? Because it's much more difficult to do that. You would need very hard plastic to you know, achieve very small bevels, right? So anyway, you know, that's the point. So you want to kind of adjust the type of bevel to whatever you are doing in Blender. And that's really important because it will sell, again, the feel and the design language much stronger, right? Now, in terms of sizes of chamfers and bevels, you want to make sure that your model has different sizes of chamfers and bevels when you model. So let's say I'm gonna have a large chamfer in here. So for example, here I would create a smaller chamfer on this, you know, on this side, right? So I'm gonna have a smaller chamfer here and larger chamfer in here. It's just going to add more interest and dynamic feel to your design. You know, it's not gonna be so boring. So when you are using bevel modifier, because at the moment you're using bevel modifier with hard ups, if I'm going to adjust the bevel, it's going to adjust it on all the edges, right? But sometimes you may want to create different bevels on different edges. So you may want to do it either with a modifier by adding secondary bevel, or you could do it manually by simply beveling this manually like this, right? So you could do something like that. So you're going to have a tiny bevel in here and slightly larger bevel in here. So again, making sure that you have different sizes of chamfers and bevels is gonna make your design look much more interesting, much more professional, and you know, kind of more pleasing to look at, okay? Now let's talk about how many segments of bevels you should run, okay? Most of the time, you will be fine with 3 segments, which by the way, is what hard ups it's set to default, okay? 3 segments. You don't really need more than that. Unless you're gonna be creating a massive bevel, you're gonna have these faceted edges, you probably need to add more resolution, right? If you have a huge bevel. But with small bevels, you know, you don't really need more than 3 segments. So if you have a tiny bevel like this, right, there's no need to add more segments, okay? Now, if you're running a game asset and if you want to, export it to a game engine, what you want to do instead, you want to run something called mid-poly bevel, which is one segmented bevel. So scroll down to one segment. You can see here in the bottom, right here. So you're gonna have a one segmented bevel, and then you need to add something called weighted normals to fix this shading, because you can see that now shading is all fucked up. So we need to basically alt click on sharpen to add a weighted normal modifier to flex all these faces, and that's all you need. So when I'm gonna apply this mesh here, you can see that we're gonna have only one segmented bevel. It's kind of like a chamfer, but it's really tiny. And because we're running weighted normals, it's going to, and Autosmooth is going to smooth this bevel here, right? Because what Autosmooth is going to try to do is going to try to average out the angles between this flat surface. This is why it appears smooth, although it's a flat face. But these faces on top are going to be flat because of weighted normal modifiers. So this is a neat trick that you can do, and this is how, for example, we design game assets, because it's very efficient. And also you got real bevels. Because when you bake bevels onto a model, they can look very fake, especially in certain lighting situations. So the angles in the game engines, when you look at the bevel that was baked, so technically the edge is sharp, but the bevel was baked using Marmoset or Substance Painter. It's a texture, it's an illusion basically. You can actually see sharp edges. So I would recommend, if you can, using mid-poly bevel technique. That's what it's used in Star Citizen, Alien Isolation, all these games. They just look way more realistic in games, and because they're actually real bevels. You'll have a bit more geometry, but it's no problem. And it's really easy to unwrap it because you don't have to worry about them. You simply export them as is, and we show this in detail in our game asset course, which at the moment is available only through Academy 2.0 program. So anyway, this is what you want to do. So for games, I would suggest using mid-poly beveling. Now, if you're running bevels manually like this for game assets, then you want to add as few segments as possible. This probably wouldn't be a good idea to add so many to create a curved surface, but at the same time, do not create too much topology. Because obviously this is the point of game assets. You want to have as little topology as possible. So what I would recommend is adding even number of segments or uneven number of edges. And this is very important, because if you have an even number of edges, what you can do, you can select every second edge between these two supporting edges of the bevel, and you can dissolve them, and you can halve the resolution of bevel to whatever number you want. So again, when you're creating game assets, remember to create even number of segments and as few as possible. So when you're creating a low poly out of your high poly, you can simply dissolve two edges and you're good to go, and you can bake the higher resolution bevel into lower resolution bevel. Okay, so this would be my tip for game asset. Now let's talk about live versus destructive bevels. Okay, this is a destructive bevel because it's added to geometry and you cannot readjust it without add-ons. A live bevel is going to be a bevel added through a modifier like this one, so you can remove it or add it. And this bevel doesn't get applied, so when you go to edit mode, you can still see one edge. If I'm going to apply this bevel here, you can see that let me just apply it. There you go. You can see that the bevel was applied, and this would be very difficult to change if you don't have any add-ons like Mesh Machine, because Mesh Machine can actually deal with this. But if you don't have Mesh Machine, that would be very difficult. So I would suggest keeping this bevel modifier as long as possible. In fact, you don't have to apply the structural bevel at all. You can keep it as a modifier. The only time that you need to create these manual bevels is when you want to create something really large on just one corner. So let's say that I wanted to create here on this side a really large bevel like this. Okay, I'm gonna go with let's say 10 segments, and this is gonna be a manually added bevel. Now I can adjust it and remove it even if I have add-ons like Mesh Machine, because I can simply select this bevel, go to Y menu, and I can just unbevel this, and I'm gonna go back to my corner. So if you have add-ons, and you should be using add-ons, you can actually very easily change this. You can for example unfuse it to change it to a chamfer. You can refuse it. You can have a lot of options So you can add segments, remove segments, etc. You can do a lot of things with Mesh Machine. So if you have add-ons, you have more freedom to do stuff. But again, remember that baked bevels, technically the bevels you apply manually, are not that easily removable in Blender. So use them when you know what you're doing. Another way of creating this bevel here would be to create a vertex group or simply add a B weight or bevel weight to this edge. So we can do it with hard ups by pressing Ctrl Q on mark and add a bevel. And this bevel is going to be running on a different limit method, which is vertex group. And you can see here that hard ups added a custom vertex group here that is responsible for this edge. So you can adjust this bevel here on just this one edge. You can add another bevel here by control clicking on bevel, and I got two bevels running on this one. One of them is assigned to a vertex group and the other one is global. So this global bevel is going to be based on angle and this one's going to be based on vertex group. The same thing you can do basically using a B weight or bevel weight. So you can assign a bevel weight here. So go to edge and assign bevel weight here and 1 and enter. So now we can add a bevel here. So I'm going to add it through modifier menu in Blender. So edit, was it edit or generate? I think generate. I hate this menu. And then we're going to change it to weight, and you see it's only affecting this one edge, right? So we're going to adjust segment maybe to like 6, and then we're going to shade smooth, and then we're going to add Autosmooth and fix it, and we're good to go. So you got this one bevel here, and it's just simply running on this one edge, but it's basically limited to weight. So you got different options, for different situations. So this is how I would, deal with larger bevels or larger chamfers. You can do it either procedurally or manually and simply apply it permanently to your mesh. But like I said, if you have stuff like Mesh Machine, you can always remove them or adjust them, so you got freedom, which is again why you should be working with add-ons, right? Now let me talk to you a little bit about vanilla Blender, because it's a little bit different. So if let's have a cube in here, and if you now want to add a bevel to your mesh, you're gonna have to do a few things that HardOps is doing actually automatically behind the scenes. So if I'm gonna add a bevel, first of all, you'll see that you're gonna have one segment, not three. So you need to add more segments. Secondly, you can see that HardOps and Box Cutter adds Autosmooth automatically. Here, I'm in Blender 4.0. In Blender 4.1, this is actually very different. So watch my video if you want to learn how to add Autosmooth in Blender 4.1 and above. It's in short, it's fucked up, but it is what it is. So here you're gonna add Shade Autosmooth, which is gonna add Autosmooth to my mesh, and again I have to add weighted normals because I want to flex these faces. So we're not done yet, guys. Okay, there's still a bit more here to be done. So first of all, this amount of the bevel you need to adjust manually. It's a little bit too large. And the second thing you want to do is you want to change the on the geometry, you want to change the miter, and I'll show you what it does. So if I'm going to create a cut in here, you can clearly see that you have this nasty corners here, right? And this is because the miter here is set to sharp. If I change it to arc, this is gonna disappear, and I have no idea why this isn't set up like this from beginning, because that should be a default Blender bevel setup, not this fucking sharp bullshit. I don't know who the fuck came up with this shit. Anyway, so this is it, and these are operations you're gonna have to perform every single time you're adding bevel to your mesh, and also you will have to remember to make sure that your bevel is in the correct position. Because now with a weighted normal and then with 4.1 Blender Autosmooth modifier in here, you need to make sure that the bevel is in correct position, because if you place it in the wrong place, you will see that you're gonna have a problem. So now this again is something that HardOps and Box Cutter is doing for you automatically. But if you don't have these add-ons, you're gonna have to do it for every single object that you're beveling. Every single time you add a modifier to Blender, because when you add more modifiers here, they're gonna be added at the top, and you're gonna have to readjust everything manually. Whereas when you're working with HardOps and Box Cutter, this thing is done for you automatically. So if I'm gonna add weighted normals and I'm gonna run my cut, you see I don't have to adjust anything. Everything is done for me automatically, including the miter, right? Because miter in HardOps is set as it should be to arc. because logic. So in short, it's important to place the bevel modifier underneath the booleans because you want to cut your mesh first and then you want to bevel it, because then the bevel gonna be running all over the cut. Whereas if you're gonna have it above, you see that the cut will not be included in bevel because you're cutting into a mesh that was already beveled, right? Makes sense? So you first cut, then you bevel, then you apply weighted normals, then you apply Autosmooth if you're using 4.1 blender and you need a modifier for Autosmooth, okay? In 4.0, we don't need a modifier, we just simply use Autosmooth here from the right click menu. So this is how you should be arranging your modifiers, and you need to do it for every single mesh manually if you're not using hard ups and box cutter. So very quickly, let me show you how this works in 4.1. I'm not using 4.1 because it pisses me the fuck off. You know, until I really have to, I just want to stay away from this shit. Here we are with this Blender 4.1, and you can see that now we have Autosmooth added automatically by hard ups, and when I'm gonna add weighted normals here, it's gonna be added in the bottom. So you know, this is really important to understand how it all works. And if you're gonna do it manually, you're gonna have to do it manually. So you will have to go here to modifiers and you generate bevel, then you have to set up everything correctly. Then you go to modifiers again, you go to edit and you go to weighted normals, and then you also have to add your Autosmooth to your mesh and make sure that Autosmooth is gonna be here. So here we're gonna have to adjust the amount of segments again, and you're gonna have to repeat these operations every time you create new object, okay? So that's how it looks in 4.1, which is again why I'm sticking to 4.0, because simply it's much more fun and easier to use. Another thing that's really important is to know how to deal with really flat angles. So let's say I have an angle like this, right? And this angle will not be caught by a bevel, because by default, when you add a bevel to Blender, it will be only catching angles above 30 degrees. Clearly, this angle here between these two faces is not above 30 degrees, is below 30 degrees, is like what, 10 or something. So, you know, this edge will not be caught by the bevel. So how do you fix that problem? Again, what you could do, you could select all the edges you want to bevel, you could mark them as bevel weight, add a bevel weight to all the edges, and switch the limit method here from angle to weight, and now you will have this bevel being caught in here. And alternately, what you can do, you could change the angle here. This is quite dangerous though, and I'll show you why. So I could change the angle here, you know, until this bevel catches to something a bit more sharp. I'm probably gonna be like, yeah, like 7 degrees, okay? But look what happens when I'm gonna add, for example, you know, bevel here, because the angle between these faces is similar to this one, they're gonna be flat as well. So, you know, there's a compromise here. You see that when I adjust the bevel angle, the top one disappears, and then we're gonna have these ones being smooth at 11 degrees because the angle between these two is 11 degrees, and here is 7. So the angle here is lower, right, than here, which is why this stays faceted longer than this one, which is again, if you have this kind of a situation, you can't use angle, you're gonna have to use bevel weight. You can go here to select sharp edges, right, and then select this one, and then we're going to just deselect these two. We're gonna add bevel weight here, and then we're gonna switch it to weight, and this will ensure that this bevel is gonna be catching this edge here, but this corner here gonna be smooth. So, you know, you could do the same thing with, for example, vertex groups, but, you know, bevel weight is much easier in this situation. So there you go, that's how I would deal with, you know, difficult angles, simply by adding bevel weight, and you're good to go. Now, another advanced technique is using multiple bevels to one mesh. Now, why would you want to do that? Let's say you have a larger bevel running in here, and you want to keep it quite fat, okay? Okay, let's just add, I don't know, 6 segments in here and weighted normals. And I wanted to add a cut in here, but I wanted this cut to have smaller bevel. Let's say it's a really tiny detail, and if I'm going to add it in here, you can clearly see that the bevel is overshooting. So it's a problem. So how to do this? Well, with hard ups, it's really easy. What you can do is simply go to operations and click on step, and this will add another bevel to your mesh. And when you're going to cut this mesh with a boolean, you can see that the bevel here gonna have a different size, and you got two bevels. One is above the boolean, one is below the boolean, because it's affecting only the boolean. So I can now adjust both bevels separately. So go to Q bevel, and I can adjust this bevel, right? Then press Q and adjust this bevel, okay? So you can have two different bevels or more running on one mesh. And this is really handy because now I can have a really tiny bevel in here, right? Very mechanical one, and I can have a really nice soft bevel on the whole mesh. Now the problem with this one is that if you're going to apply or use smart apply with hard ups, the main bevel is going to get applied, so be careful, because smart apply will apply all bevels except the last one, okay? So you know, this one will not be added, but the structural bevel gonna be added, the massive one, okay? So be careful. But again, you can keep them live, no problem, and you can keep stacking these bevels and create smaller and smaller bevels. So we can, you know, we could add one more on top of this. So let's say there's gonna be slightly larger, and I want to create a really tiny cut in here. So go to operations and step, and I can create a really nice tiny bevel in here. You know, like this. Again, I got three bevels, okay, running on this mesh. So it's possible, but again, you're gonna have to keep them live to be able to, you know, to adjust them, okay? So this will be a bit more advanced, but it's a really interesting technique to know, and it's very easy, and it's very easily doable with hard ups, which is why you know, you want to use these add-ons. Okay, well, I think this would be it about bevels. Hopefully this, you know, helps you out understanding how bevels work in Blender and how to become a bit more, you know, more comfortable with using bevels. Again, you should be using bevels for every single model. And like I said, my advice to you is, you know, keep the bevels live as long as possible. Preferably do not apply the main bevel at all. Even when you're exporting a model as a game asset, you can keep the bevel in as long as it's a mid-poly bevel. So if it's a one segmented bevel, you can export it with bevels and the weighted normals as a, you know, OBJ or FBX to your substance painter, and it will not mess with the UVs, so don't have to worry about it. Like I said, we have a whole course on that shows the whole process of, you know, creating a game asset, optimization, UVing, etc. And we're using a mid-poly bevel, which is again used in games like Star Citizen, Alien Isolation and all that. And they create much more realistic bevels in game engines, okay? But make sure that you're not going to apply your bevels to your model. You know, use bevels on every single model that you're going to be creating, because it's really important. And if you have more questions, you can always join our Discord, public Discord. There's a help section over there. If you get stuck, you can also ask some questions, and I'm pretty sure that the guys over there is going to help you out. That's it for this one. And again, if you're a beginner and you want to learn, you know, Blender basics, I suggest you grab our course called Jumpstart Hard Surface in Blender. It's free and it's a really popular course. It's probably the best and fastest way to learn Blender right now, especially if you're going into hard surface. It's gonna just take on a few hours to understand and kind of solidify this knowledge, because, you know, there's a lot of information out there. There's a lot of options, menus. It's very confusing and intimidating when you first open Blender, but trust me, you don't need any of this. You just need specific tools to get the job done. And you know, this course will teach you what you need, what you don't need, and it's really easy. Okay, so go ahead, the link is in the video description, grab the course and enjoy. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next one.